This video is going to be on a very small section of Acadian part of Nova Scotia, Richmond County in Cape Breton, and especially the Isle Madame. Just here's a quick graveyard picture. This is actually, I believe, at River Bourgeois, which is in the Richmond County. And just show you a few pictures of the area. You can see the homes and see lots of Landrys, lots of Samsons, as I'll explain in the video in a minute. The fish factory and some of the homes. It's very rustic there. There's still some fishing going on. Beautiful countryside, like I said, in the summertime. Wonderful place. Okay, again, I'd like to do a little more in-depth for those that have relatives from this area. Now this is, I'm going to just go out a bit here. Of course, this is in Nova Scotia again. But this is one section of the province, high Acadian area. I mean, of course, there are Scottish and Irish and British people that have come here as well. But really, it is very much a very strong Acadian area of the province of Nova Scotia. This Ille Madame, by the way, there's another Ille Madame over on the coast of France as well. But this Ille Madame, hundreds of years of history here for the French Canadians, and just up the coast this way is Louisbourg, just quite a ways, probably another 100 kilometers up or 60, 80 miles up the coast from there. But all of these places, you can see the French names here, Saint-Esprit and Framboise, Lordways. It's called Lardoise, but Lordways is how they say it. Gracie or Gracieville, which comes from a French family name. The Grand Grève, St. Peter's, which was Port Toulouse, Thibaultville, which of course comes from the Thibault family. Louisdale, which was also before was called had a different name. It's called St. Louis Barachois. Before it changed its name about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, the name was changed. Martinique, Descosé, there's another here. As I go in a little bit, you'll see there's a Poirierville here, Cap La Ronde, Petit de Grat Island, Cape Auget, Cap Auget, Arichat, West Arichat. West Arichat, as I mentioned in my other video, was also called Little Arichat, and it was also called Acadiaville, because a lot of the people that settled there came from the Annapolis Valley after the expulsion of the Acadians. They returned to Nova Scotia in this area. And so these are all the way through, even here. Hureau was another family, Lower River inhabitants. So this is all French area all through here. These are all French, and somewhat up through the lake system here. I'm going to go a little bit closer with the map, and then I want to go over a few things here with the. Okay, so let's just look at Ille Madame for a minute, or Madame Island, or Ille Madame. You can see there's a few names that popped up here. Poulamon, you'll see that if you're doing family history. Poulamon, Descosé or Descos, Poirierville, Rocky Bay, Lochside, Pondville. These names will show up. All these names will show up on your family when you're doing family history in census reports and baptisms and that type of thing. But it's important to realize that in the French Canadian, the reason the records are fantastic in this. If you're doing family research for French Canadians, you're lucky because the records are fantastic generally. And so very important to note that a lot of the records are going to have Arichat. So even though the person was living in Rocky Bay, or they're over here in Petit de Gras or Cape Auget or West Arichat, and if the records are from the from the 1700s even up into the mid 1800s, you're going to see Arichat on almost everything. All the marriages were there, all the baptisms were there. Why? Because that's where the church was, right? I mean, that's where. So later in the 18th century, the church was established in Petit de Gras, and also one over here in West Arichat, and one up here in Descosé. So you'll find from about 1860, there's more churches. There's more people living there, and then because of that, they started more churches. But you'll see Arishat, a lot of Arishat, and we're talking people that even are Arishat records that are. Sorry about that. I'm just going to go back. Arishat records, even from people that are up here in Lewisdale and at Grand Aunts and some of these areas, their records, their marriages were performed in Arishat. So just because you see the record Arishat doesn't mean that's actually where they are. Now, when I'm doing my family history, I put in Arishat unless I can see where they came from other records. I put Arishat if the record says Arishat. Now, maybe they were living in Robbins here or Cape Breton. So that's interesting about the church. So this town is still there. The church is still there, as are the other churches, right? But this church was the primary one. What's important to note too is that if you're ever to go, had a chance to go visit there, beautiful area, but this Cape Breton, if I've driven out this road here, and I think there might be 6, maybe 8 houses out here, okay? But if you're looking at the records, the amount of families that are in records, there was a lot of people living out here, and yet there's almost nobody out here now. And so you realize that there's been a great depopulation of a lot of these areas. You go through there and there's just the odd house, and there's probably not even a foundation left for a lot of the places. So, like I said, there were a lot of homes out here. So if you see Cape Breton, you go on a trip out there and you go, yeah, my family's from out here, and you go around looking for houses and they don't find any. Well, the 200-year-old houses aren't there. They just aren't. The Arishat still has some older homes, but a lot of the houses here are gone. The largest communities now, if you're going through, are out here in West Arishat and Port Royal and Petit de Gras and up through in this area, and of course Arishat. And this has become a lot more rural here, even though there were at the time tons of people living through Poulamon, Descosé, Poirierville, Martinique. These were a lot of families living there, but now there's very few. They're just, it's very, very rustic now. So that's good to know. Like I said, beautiful place to visit in the summer. In the winter, it would be as beautiful, I guess, in a different way. But if you ever get a chance to get up there, it's a beautiful place. So, like I said, some of these names changed. So even though they are, so Port Royal, I mentioned that a lot of people make errors when they're putting in their family history, and they put Port Royal, but they choose Port Royal in Annapolis County, which is way other end of the province, and people aren't really from that area. And so just realize that when you're doing your work, that's the case. And people did not move around very much. So we have family that are from over here in Lordways and Rockdale, and this area here. They tended to marry within this. Probably 80 to 90% of the marriages were within people that lived in this area. Some of them, of course, did marry from people over in these areas. There was definitely some people that did marry over here. Same thing here in River Bourgeois, the French area here. They didn't marry that much with people from Arishat, even though we're talking, you could drive from here to here in a car now for, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most. It's a very short drive, and but in those days, that was probably by boat for everything. I mean, they did have a bridge here in the end. They did have a ferry, and then there was a bridge there. But I think back in the day, it was probably by boat to get around most of this area. So they married within their area. So if you're looking for marriage records in this area, you're probably going to find that the people they married were in this area. Like I said, not always the case, but generally speaking, that is the case. And so, look, they're kind of, I'd almost say there's sections, right? And so when I'm going to, in a short minute, put a list of family names up here. But the names that are in Lordways, Rockdale, and Lordways, and Gracieville are different family names. Some are the same, but there's some different family names that have greater predominance here than they do over here or up here. Same up here. Up here there are Burkes and McPhees and a lot of Sampsons and that kind of thing. Now there's Sampsons down here as well, but here you have more Boudreaux and Marchands and those type of names. But over here you have Peets and Briennes and Montbourquet and a lot of different names. So not to say that there were no Peets or Peters that were over in this area, but this is generally where the bulk of that last name would be. And so, like I said, we'll see this in all. If you were to go around graveyard to graveyard, you'd see that over here there's a lot more in the River Bourgeois. There's a lot more Burkes and Sampsons and those names than there are over in Lordways. So even though these communities were very close together, they, there was very little marrying and moving, I suppose, among the people that lived here. They moved less than the French in a lot of the other areas, like Prince Edward Island or in other parts of Nova Scotia. They moved maybe more because they were a little less settled. There was more insecurity with the English. Here they kind of were hidden away and they didn't have to move all that much. So in this Cape Breton, so this is Ile Royale here, they call it, and so as you move from over here in Ile Madame and come over here and you see this area, Tracadie, Heatherton, Pomquet, all this area through here is all French, Frankville, Havre-Boucher. These are all French areas, more like farming than fishing. Some fishing, but a lot of farming in this area as well. And then down here there's another French area, excuse me, down in Larry's River, Charles Cove, Torbay. There's a few French families over here towards Canso, Hazel Hill, and that area as well. But generally speaking, as I said, the families that came from this area stayed in this area, and there was a little bit of intermingling with the families from those other areas, but it was relatively small. So if you find that your family is in, in here in Port Royal, they probably married right here. They didn't even go over to Arishat that much. They would have married here. A little bit over here, so probably 70% of them married within their community right here. The people up here tended to marry within the people right here. And it's just a very different time than we live in now. So that gives you a basic understanding. So when you're looking for your family, the Poiriers, of course, they're going to be up in here. And, the Boudreaux is a Boudreauville right here. It's not showing up on the map right here. But again, there's lots of Boudreaux there. The Sampsons are over here, all kinds of Sampsons and Martels. And so I'm going to put up a list of some of the names of the families from this area, so that if you are interested to see if your family came, you have let's say your last name is Martel, or your last name is Pitts, or your last name is White or LeBlanc. You can say, well, did my family maybe come from here? Because that's where these French names, out of the 1,000 French names, there's only about 100 or so, less than 100 actually, that come from this whole area here. So it was relatively small. So you're going to find lots of Landrys, lots of Sampsons, lots of Boudreaux, lots of Marchand, and some of these names. There's a lot of those people here. Here is that name listing that I was speaking about, and it's about 60-something names here. And I want to just give a very quick rundown. You can print this off. I'll go through it slowly, so if you want to go and look at it, and I guess you can't print it off, but if you want to look at it slowly and see if your name is there. This is from Richmond County, which incorporates all this area that I was just going over, including Ile Madame, Lordways, River Bourgeois, and Lewisdale, in these areas. So that's called Richmond County in Nova Scotia. And these are the family names. In the column A are the French family name. And I've got them here in alphabetical order. And in the second row here, I have made alternate spellings. Some of them have a lot of, like Boudreaux has a lot, and the Borg or Bork or Burke have a lot of alternate spellings, and others not as many. And some I still haven't gotten around to. There are some alternates that I didn't get on this list yet, but I'll keep adding to it. In the red on the third column over are, right here, are the anglicized names. Some of them, and I put here at the top that these are what you're going to find if you're especially in the US and you're looking at these names. That's more likely what you're going to find, and then you are the French spelling. And some of them you no problem, no big deal, you can figure them out. But like here, the Dion and De Young, the Forest, the Foray, that's more or less common. But here's a good one, very common in the US, is Frazier, okay? But it's actually Fougere. Now, if you were in the States and looking for your family and your name was Frazier, unless you knew that your family was originally Fougere, it would be very hard to find your family in Nova Scotia, okay, because they just didn't use that word, that name very often here in Nova, or not here, but in Nova Scotia. Some of the other ones that are quite different are Jos and Joyce. There's LeBlanc, like I've mentioned before, and White, Lejeune and Young. The Martel, of course, is Martel. You're going to pick that up. But some of these names, you would have a hard time with. Another one that I found was very difficult. A couple of them were Pate or Pate. And in the States, you'll often see it. Even in Canada, sometimes you'll see this Potty or Potter or Potty with an IE. And the name Petipa in as Pit or Pits. So again, that would be hard to recognize if you were in the States, but that is what it is. And so the Pete name is Peters, and so on. King for Roy, Roy meaning king, Roi meaning king for in French. And so I'm going to just go to the top here, and just this might help you if you're doing some family history in Nova Scotia. Remember that as I said before, these are common names for this area for the French people. If I move 40, 50 miles away, some of these same names, but many different ones that aren't in this list. And if I move 200 miles away, very few of these will be there, and there'll be a whole bunch of different other French family names. So if you're looking for your family name, you can find it in Nova Scotia. If you know they're from Nova Scotia and they have a French name, you can probably find where they're from. I mean, some names like Leblanc and Boudreau are quite common all over the place, but other names are not so much. So you can probably find where your family may have come from, or get a good, at least get a much better idea if you don't have the exact knowledge of where they came from in Nova Scotia, other than just Nova Scotia. Most of the records in the U.S. show Canada or Nova Scotia. They don't. Very few of them show the actual town or the county that they came from. So I'm just going to go to the top here and just go down slowly. There you can see the names. See if your name is on there, any of your family names. I'll just as I'm going through this, I'll just say that some of these names in this area are much more common, and others are just very few of them. So Samson would be probably 10-15% of the people that are Samsons in this area. Landry is probably another 10% of the people are Landry. LeBlanc, another 10%. Marchand is probably more like 5%. Montberquet is probably more like 5%. And some of the other names, Préjean, it's coming down here to 1 or 2%. So depending on your family, how much that name is there, depending, of course, on when the family came to Nova Scotia, to that area of Nova Scotia. If they were there hundreds of years, of course, there's more of them than if they were there just for 100 years, 150 years. Thanks, and have a good day.